Number 11. Hearts for dinner. Earlier in 2021, an Oklahoma man had been accused of brutally killing 3 individuals. He had confessed to killing his neighbor, ripping out her heart, and cooking it to feed his family. On February 9, 2021, the Oklahoma man, Lawrence Anderson, who had just been released from prison the month before on domestic abuse and drug charges, stabbed 41-year-old Andrea Blankenship to death at her Chickasha residence. That, however, was not the end of the story. After he killed her, he took the heart across the street to his aunt and uncle's house, where he sometimes stayed. Then, he boiled it with some potatoes and tried to serve it to his relatives. Why? To release their demons. Someone is clearly insane. Of course, they were not interested in eating their neighbor's heart. He then killed his uncle, 67-year-old Leon Pye, and his 4-year-old granddaughter, Kios Cates. He also stabbed his aunt, Delcy Pye, but she was somehow able to survive. Soon after he was arrested, the body of Blankenship was found 2 days after Anderson's confession at the Oklahoma City Hospital, where he was receiving treatment. He's being held in the Grady County Jail, and charges are still pending against him. Number 10. The murdering neighbor. Deborah Kinsey called 911 to report that her neighbor had been killed. Police later found out that before she called authorities, she had been in a local pawn shop pawning off 3 of the victim's rings, and that she had also been wearing clothes that were soaked in blood. You'd think if you were going to kill your neighbor, you'd at least clean up before you started selling her jewelry, right? Apparently, Deborah had been the crazy neighbor with previous convictions that included drug possession, burglary, and smuggling contraband into a prison. She recently told newspaper reporters that when she was living on the street, people called her Bambi. Basically, she was nuts. But her crazy reached its peak when she stabbed her neighbor, Charlotte Nicholas, roughly 70 times in the head and neck with a screwdriver and a knife. According to the medical examiner's office, she'd stabbed Charlotte so hard that the knife blade broke and was stuck in Charlotte's body. A friend of Charlotte's from high school told police that Charlotte had been scared of her neighbor Deborah, and that Deborah had a history of beating her and stealing her things. Then, on October 20th, Deborah passed the point of no return. It's still unclear what exactly the motive behind the stabbing was, but Deborah has since been arrested and is being held in jail without bond. Deborah claimed that she couldn't remember anything that happened. It's just a good thing now that this psycho is locked up. Number 9. Driveway Shootout. In May of 2018, a man from Paris shot his neighbor several times over another noise-related quarrel. Video footage showed 43-year-old Alexander Richard Aguayo guilty of first-degree manslaughter for the death of 37-year-old Raul Carbajal. He was sentenced to 53 years in prison on October 22, 2021. But what happened? Carbajal was cleaning his car out when Aguayo got super annoyed with the sound of a vacuum. Aguayo is seen on surveillance loading a .40 caliber semi-automatic weapon into his truck. After making a quick stop at Del Taco, he arrived home only to be enraged when he saw Carbajal still handling the vacuum. In the video, Aguayo was seen saying something to Carbajal, stepping up to the wall, peeking over it, and even briefly strolling down and around it. Carbajal was washing his vehicle in and around his garage and driveway while also yelling harshly at Aguayo. The heated confrontation continued for several minutes before turning into a violent standoff in their separate driveways. The victim used the vacuum hose to strike the suspect. As the hose struck Aguayo, he grabbed it, pulled out his pistol, and started shooting at Carbajal. As Carbajal tried to take cover by running into his garage, Aguayo leaped over the wall and chased him, shooting at him the whole time. In total, 14 rounds were fired at Carbajal. According to a court complaint, Aguayo then hopped into his car and fled the scene, momentarily stopping to toss the gun into a stormwater drain. A few streets away, a patrolman noticed Aguayo driving past, which led to his eventual arrest. He obviously pleaded guilty. Number 8. Wrong house. Usually, if someone breaks into your home, you have the right to defend your property. Being shocked and afraid of an intruder is a legit reason to use a weapon, right? In 2018, a former Dallas police officer, 30-year-old Amber Geiger, was arrested for shooting and killing a man who she believed was trying to burglarize her home. But wait, the story isn't as simple as it sounds. First of all, the guy wasn't a burglar. Second, it wasn't even her house. Wait, what? Amber Geiger had just got off a long and exhausting shift. She then entered what she claims she believed was her house. Later, thinking Botham Jean was an intruder breaking in, she shot him. But this case gets even more tricky. Gene was simply sitting on his couch eating ice cream when she killed him. Apparently, her house was located on a floor directly below his, in the same complex. When she saw the door was half open, she rushed inside the house and shot him without taking the time to make sure she was even in her own home. The decision was bound to gain national attention, given the fact that it was a killing of a black individual by a white cop. She was later terminated for the incident by the Dallas Police Department, and at the end of her jury trial on August 5, 2021, a 23-page-long ruling came down convicting her of murder and sentencing her to 10 years in prison. Geiger's appeal centered on the argument that mistaking Jean's flat for her own was justifiable, and so was the killing. Her attorney requested that the appellate court free her of the killing or replace the conviction for criminally negligent homicide, which carries a relatively shorter penalty. However, that didn't work out. Prosecutors in Dallas contended that the mistake was not justifiable. Geiger acknowledged an intent to kill Jean, and the prosecutors stated that the murder is, quote, a result-oriented offense. She will, however, be eligible for parole in 2024. What do you think of this case? Can someone really make a mistake like that? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. Shoveling snow. Pennsylvania saw this year's most insignificant brawl turn into an unexpected homicide. According to authorities, a fatal gun shooting happened in Plains Township, about 15 miles southwest of Scranton, after a whole 2 feet of snow wrapped the area. Plains Township police officers reacted to a report of gunshots in a residential area. They found 50-year-old James Goy and 48-year-old Lisa Goy dead in the middle of the street outside their home. Area residents guided officers to a house nearby that was owned by the Goys. Officers could hear gunfire as they reached the front door. Officers found 47-year-old James Spade dead inside his residence from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Neighbors told authorities that Spade and the Goys seemed to have a long-running quarrel that abruptly ended on the coldest day of the year. They claimed the Goys were shoveling snow across the street and onto Spade's property. Spade then asked the pair to stop, which sparked off a heated argument. In surveillance footage, you can see them arguing and hurling names at each other. James Goy allegedly tossed a tool that he was using to shovel snow at Spade. When James Goy reached Spade with a raised fist, Spade retreated into his residence and picked up a gun. He then came back outside and shot the Goys dead in the street. He then went inside and shot himself. Number 6. Ghost murder. Here's the story of how a simple prank went tragically wrong. A lady was fatally shot after an attempt to pull off a prank dressed up as a ghost to scare her neighbors. Unfortunately, the prank backfired horribly. The unnamed victim, somewhere between 20 and 25 years old, was wearing a bright white gown and veil. She was seen wandering in the streets of Nucapan de Juarez, Mexico, trying to freak people out just for fun. The incident happened earlier this year on October 15th. She was wearing the terrifying costume of the Weeping Woman, a ghost who is claimed to roam the streets grieving her dead children. According to mythology, the fearsome figure wanders the earth in misery after drowning her 2 kids in a river in a frenzy of rage upon discovering her husband with some other woman. Locals had reported seeing the ghostly woman patrolling the neighborhood while crying, quote, "Ay mis hijos," which translates to, "Oh my children." One homeowner decided to record the woman's antics only minutes before she was shot dead by a terrified neighbor. The frightened shooter ran away into the dark after firing several bullets at the woman, according to local media. The municipal police did not release the victim's name. Furthermore, no arrests had been recorded concerning the shooting, but the state officials initiated an inquiry after the terrible incident. The video of the Weeping Woman, as well as some horrible photographs reportedly portraying the victim, have subsequently gone viral on social media. Number 5. Killer dogs. A proud mommy of 20 cats was butchered in the most heinous way conceivable by her neighbor's 2 dogs. During the winter of 2014, 57-year-old Clonda Rishi's bruised corpse was found nude outside her home in Dayton, Ohio. The police had suspected she was mauled to death by 2 male mixed-breed bull mastiffs who ripped her coat off in the onslaught. As per the Dayton Daily News, Rishi had complained about the dogs multiple times to officials, but nothing was done. Had police taken action, the whole incident could have been averted. The dogs were shot dead by police, who arrived on the scene after they attempted to charge them. Andrew Nason, 28, and Julie Custer, 23, who lived in the house next to Rishi's, were arrested and held on charges of reckless murder. It's unfortunate that animals were responsible to put an end to the life of a fervent animal lover in the most grievous manner possible. Number 4. Singing loudly. The High Court of Kerala, India confirmed a man's life sentence for stabbing his next-door neighbor to death. But what was the grave sin that the neighbor committed, which ticked the murderous neighbor off so much? He was singing too loud. The convict's daughter could not focus on her studies and was getting distracted by the neighbor's noisy religious chanting. On the evening of March 19, 2011, the deceased, Satsitaran Pillai, was chanting devotional songs aloud when his neighbor came over and complained that the music was interfering with his child's studies. The neighbor was accompanied by 2 other individuals, which ended in a dire confrontation. The suspect was stabbed 3 times during the fight, and all 3 men were arrested for the murder. However, one of them died during the hearings, and the 2 others were condemned and sentenced to life in prison by the trial judge. The sentence was later challenged in court. The court confirmed the prime accused verdict and sentence based on the victim's wife's testimony, who was the lone eyewitness to the gory scene. On the other hand, the High Court acquitted the other man who was co-accused, stating that simply being there at the scene does not show he had any purpose to conduct an offense. The poor victim could have never guessed that performing religious chants in his spare time at his own residence would culminate in his death at the hands of a hostile neighbor. Number 3. Barking dogs. A 46-year-old man in Ningbo, Zhejiang province was charged with murder after allegedly stabbing 3 neighbors to death and injuring one during a disagreement that went horribly wrong. Mr. Wang got into an argument with his neighbors, the Chen family, concerning their noisy dog on the evening of October 10, 2018. Wang rushed outside to grab the pet and carried it over to the neighbor's apartment, where he asked them to get the dog to be quiet. However, the discussion failed miserably, and Wang rushed into his house, picked up a knife, and murdered Mrs. Chen, her daughter, and her husband. During the dispute, Chen's mother received minor injuries. This was not the first time the Wang and Chen families had a dispute. Wang had spoken to his neighbors several times prior to the event because the dog's constant yapping had affected his sleep. However, he never lodged any complaints or called the police. Wang has no criminal background and has never used drugs. Following the event, he cleared a blood alcohol test. Predictably, the story has sparked a debate between the dog-loving group and the anti-dog clan over the incident being avoided if rules enforcing pet courtesy for dog owners had been in place. Number 2. Florida man. A Florida man was charged with murder recently after investigators say he fatally shot his neighbor after an altercation about a cat. How are animals even becoming catalysts in brutal murders? According to Marion County Sheriff's Office authorities, 58-year-old Clifton Anthony Bliss Jr. was arrested on second-degree murder charges in connection with the shooting in October 2021. As per investigators, Bliss grew enraged when his neighbor's cat came onto his property, so he grabbed a revolver and threatened to kill the animal. Authorities say Taylor pleaded with Bliss not to shoot his cat. That's when Bliss shot Taylor instead. Taylor died on the spot, and Bliss was arrested and sent to the Marion County Prison, where he was kept without bond. Number 1. Cleaning the gun. In Georgia, a man's sheer recklessness altered the trajectory of a son's life forever. A striving actress unfortunately died in Georgia after being hit by a bullet. The bullet was unintentionally fired right through the side of a building by a neighbor. On September 26, 2021, 36-year-old Carla Foley, who had already had credits across several independent films, was sleeping in bed when a bullet pierced into her Duluth apartment and shot her in the head. According to the outlet, on discovering his mother being unresponsive, her 17-year-old son Keandre immediately called 911. According to the outlet, upon discovering his mother unresponsive, her 17-year-old son Keandre immediately called 911. When officers arrived, they found a bullet hole in Foley's wall, and that's when her 22-year-old neighbor, Maxwell Williamson, came into the picture. He told them that he was just cleaning his gun when it misfired. Apparently, the guy wasn't even aware that it was loaded. Williamson was then arrested on charges of involuntary manslaughter and reckless conduct. Foley's son explained how his mother worked incredibly hard to provide for him, and this was an untimely death that she did not deserve. Keandre told the outlet, "It doesn't feel real. I found my mama by myself. I just don't get it. I don't understand. She don't bother nobody. My mama didn't do nothing." End quote. The teen is currently staying with Foley's mother, who is devastated by her daughter's unforeseeable demise. Quote, "I've never experienced the hurt, the pain that I'm feeling. I don't know what to do," Jacqueline Foley, Foley's mother, told the outlet. Thanks for watching. What do you think of these killer neighbors? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time on the Bad Badger.